when you take my work. DUI is a waiver protection after suicide.
So, good evening, and today we'll discuss regarding object-oriented programming language. So, when you're working with any type of programming language, nowadays, every programming language should support object-oriented technology. Why? Because when you're going to combine the data in a group of manner, then we must and shouldly go with object-oriented technology. The main intention of object-oriented programming is to simulate the real world object. Whatever the real world object we are having, like human being or else some other which human being is seeing, everything we call it as a object. For example, some animal is there, we call it as an object. Pen is there, we call it as a object. Pencil is there. So everything which we are seeing, we call it as a object. When you observe any object, whatever it may be, so it is having its own attributes and its own behavior. For example, if I took some television is one object, TV. So if I take TV is an object, it is having its own attributes and its own behavior. So in a general term, we call it as a properties, functionalities. We call it as a properties and functionalities. When you observe any object, we can find these two things. For example, what we said, that television is one object. The properties of television is like picture tube, the screen, and internal board, so and controlling buttons. These all things like volume increase decrease buttons, channel change buttons, like that we can find different buttons. These all things we call it as a properties of television. And when it comes to functionalities, view is there and means display. Display is the functionality of a television. When we switch on the computer, some display will occur. Whatever the channel you kept, that channel is going to run. That is the functionality of television. Similarly, if you take some pen is also, we can say it is an object. So when it comes to pen, the properties are nibble, the plastic, ink, everything we call it as a properties. Functionality. So functionality is nothing but writing. With the help of pen, we are going to write some content on paper. That writing is functionality of that pen. So like that, when you observe any object, so that object is having its own properties and functionality. Already I told you that human being is also an object. When you observe human being, it is having its own properties like eyes, nose, ears, kidney, heart, blood, everything, skin. These are all the properties of human being. Functionalities, seeing, listening, okay, smelling. These are all the functionalities of human being. So like that here, we took one example like parrot. So parrot is one animal. So if we consider parrot as an object, so its name, age, and color are the attributes. Singing, dancing are the behaviors. So like that, every object is having its own properties and functionalities. So in some programming concepts, we say that properties and functionalities, or else in some programming language, we say that attributes and behavior. So when we observe these real world objects, here the properties are secure. Whatever you consider, whatever it may be the object, when you observe that, the properties are secure. How can say these are secure? For example, television. I said the television. So television is having the properties like a picture tube and these all things. So when you see the television, I'm saying that picture tube is there. Can anyone is seeing the picture tube directly? I said that some wires are there, circuits are there. Whether anyone can able to see directly when we saw the TV. So just I can see the box itself. It is having one box, and when you switch on, I'm getting display. But we never saw picture tube, circuits, wires, these all things. I'm saying that human being is having some properties like kidney, heart, blood. Okay, these all things are there. Can we people are seeing when you observe or when you saw one human being, are you seeing these all properties in their body directly? No. Why? Because the properties are secured in the real world object. Everything, whatever it may be. Even you take pen also. I said that pen is having ink. Can you touch the ink? No. So if you purchase a pen, the ink is covered with some plastic. So you are not able to touch it. But if you want to do something, if you want to do like touching ink, it will be so very difficult to you. Why? Because so your fingers will be getting problem. Similarly, so when you open the TV and to want to see the picture tube, again you're supposed to take your tube to service provider. So why? Because these all are secure. These all are secure. The software, the programmer's intention is they want to implement some applications based on the real world objects. That is their intention. Then they found a solution that is called object oriented programming. So with the help of object oriented programming, we can simulate the real world objects, whatever it may be. Simulation in the sense, just you can provide the properties and functionalities of that particular object, and you can able to provide the security to the properties only. Whatever the properties they have, we can able to provide the security for these properties. And the functionalities everyone knows. So functionality should be visible to all. So for that, you don't need to provide any security. So that is the main reason why the programmers, means the industry people, implemented object-oriented technology. So object-oriented technology is used to simulate the real-world objects. That's the main reason. When it comes to programming, object-oriented programming, so this programming can be done with the help of classes. There is a topic called class. With the help of class, we can implement object-oriented programming. So we can find different types of object-oriented programming languages. So every language is using class is an object, sorry, class is a topic to implement object-oriented programming. Like in C++, or else Java, .NET, now Python also. Every object-oriented programming language must and shouldly contain the concept called class. So Python is also having a class called class to implement object-oriented technology. So already some people having knowledge on Java and some people may having knowledge on C programming, whatever it may be. So in Python, the class declaration will be somewhat different when compared with other programming languages. Here, the class is going to define like this: class with class name, class with class name, open close brackets. So these open close brackets are optional. If you want, you can use it, otherwise you can leave it. Directly I can say the class name, colon. Colon is compulsory to define the indentation. So in Python, the block of code is going to define with the help of indentation only. So to get that indentation, you must and should go with colon. Every class is having one special method that is called underscore underscore init underscore underscore. So underscore underscore init underscore underscore, and self is the default parameter. So maximum every class should contain this method. We'll discuss regarding this one at the time of going to program. And here also some having some code like that. So this is about how to write the class. When you're going to write the class, you should keep in mind that whatever the method you are writing within the class, you should contain the default one parameter that is called self. So anybody having knowledge regarding self? What is the use of self? So the people who are having knowledge on Java can able to tell. Why? Because the self is a word which is default in object-oriented technology. What is the use of self? What is the meaning of self? Anyone? Okay. So self indicates invoking object. The name itself is saying that self is saying indicated invoking object, means present working object. Present working object. So representative of class. Okay, somewhat. So self is going to represent invoking object. Here the class is nothing but, so general definition we can say that it is a blueprint of an object. Class is a blueprint of an object. So when you're going to define an object, so you can't directly define the object. So you're not supposed to write the program for every object. What you're going to do is you're going to implement one blueprint. So for example, the civil engineers are giving one blueprint to us to construct an house. So with the help of that blueprint, we can create n number of houses with same measurements and same directions and everything, same plan. Similarly, if you designed one class, with the help of that classes, we can create n number of objects that we call it as a instances. Objects are instances. I can say that instance also. So once you created one class, based on that class, you can create n number of objects or instances. Okay. So here it is in a blueprint. It is in a blueprint. So self indicates, I said that it is having n objects and you can able to create n objects. Self indicates current working object. So right now, for which object you are going to work, that is going to indicate self. So that's why I said that invoking object. And the default, keep in mind that whatever the method you are going to define within a class, by default, it should contain one parameter that is called self. Then after, if you required any parameters, we can define it. So even though your method doesn't require any parameters, but you should keep one parameter that is called self. So we'll work on small example on this one. How we're going to define a class and what is meant by init. When you're working with constructors, when you're working with object-oriented programming, I will say that For example, person, I'm going to take one person. So person is having its own properties. Or else I'm going to take student. So student is one object and one student, one object. If in a class 60 students are there, I can say that 60 objects are there. So one object is going to represent one student. So for that, I'm going to make one class. And when it comes to student, student is having some properties, his own properties, means to identify the student, his roll number, his name, his class, and whatever the marks he got. Like this, we say that these are the properties. Functionalities. Functionality is nothing but so with the help of this data, what you are going to perform. So I'm going to perform the calculate total, average, and result. So these we call it as a properties. Just a minute. Sorry, I took a lot of time. So here the thing is, when you are considering one student, the student is having these all properties and these are the functionalities. So it will be applicable for one student. If the class is having 60 students, then 60 students is having their own properties and their own functionalities. So for these all things, I'm going to make one carbon copy that we call it as a class. So I'm going to create one class with whatever the properties is student is having and whatever the functionalities is having, everything I'm going to mention here. But the thing is, when I'm going to create one object for student, we supposed to allocate some memory to that particular student. So at the time of allocating the memory, we may need to do something, means some operations we supposed to do. So sometimes we may require and sometimes may not require anything. For that reason, I'm going to use one topic called constructor. So constructor is one type of special method. Constructor is one type of special method which is going to execute automatically when a particular object is going to create. Assume it, some S1 is one object, I am going to create it. S1 is an object, I am going to create it. When I'm going to create the object S1 with these all properties and functionalities, then Python is allocating some memory to S1. It is going to allocate some memory to S1. At that time, this constructor is going to call automatically. You no need to call that constructor only. Automatically, when the object is created, that method is going to execute. So the reason for that method is, for some situations, we may need to do something at the time of allocating the memory and at the time of deallocating the memory. So when I'm going to allocate memory to S1, I need to do some operations. At the same time, at the time of deallocation also, I need to do some operations. For that, we are going to use two special methods. One is called constructor, another one is called destructor. So these two are the special methods in object-oriented technology we are going to use. So constructor is using at the time of allocating the memory and destructor is running at the time of deallocating the memory. So when it comes to constructor, we are going to use the method called underscore underscore init underscore underscore. This is the method, we call it as a constructor. So, and this method is going to execute automatically when the object is going to create it. Similarly, for destructor, we are going to use the method called underscore underscore del underscore underscore self default, it will be there. So this is a method we are going to use for destructor and it will be executed at the time of deallocating the memory. So these two are the special methods, we call it as a special methods. So already we people worked with functions, means methods. So when you wrote one method, if you want to execute that one, you're supposed to call that method only. Then only it is going to execute. Otherwise, it will not execute it. but these two methods are going to execute automatically based on the situation rise. So at the time of allocating the memory, init method is going to execute. At the time of deallocating the memory, del is method going to execute. Okay. So we'll work with small example on this one. So how and when it is going to work. So I'm opening Python. So file, new file. So just I want to create one class with constructor and destructor, and I want to know when it is going to work. Simply I'm working with class student. So open close brackets. These are optional. If you want, you can use it. Otherwise, you no need to use that one. So colon. So what I'm doing is def underscore init underscore. So self is the default method. Self is the default method. Sorry, default argument. You must essentially use this one. So print some student object is created. I'm getting message student object is created. Similarly, def underscore del underscore self. So this del method is going to execute at the time of deallocating the memory ending. So just I'm saving this program, giving last one. Just I'm running this one. So some object I'm going to create. So for example, s1 equal to, so student. So del s1 I'm saying. Already you people know regarding the del method and the use of del. Already you people know. So we worked with list, strings, tuples, sets, everything. So del is going to deallocate the memory. When I called s1 equal to student, I got the message student object is created. So this method is available on init method. I didn't call init method and I didn't call init method, but it was executed. Del is a method, it is a destructor which is going to execute at the time of deallocating the memory. So to deallocate the memory in Python, we are using the method, the statement called del. When I called del s1, I got the message destructor is called and student object is removed from memory. Okay, I didn't say to call this method, automatically it was called. Okay, so it is about constructor and destructor. So once you created one class, we can create n number of objects. For example, I created s1. Similarly, I go with s2 also. some S3 also. So if I said S1, it is a student object. S2 student object. S3 student object. So like that, we can create n number of objects. So whatever the properties and functionalities you mentioned on student, everything will come under here. And deallocation, del of S1. Similarly, del of S2. Similarly, del of S3. So when you destructed objects, automatically these objects are going to deallocate the memory. Now S3 is not available. So this is about the concept of constructor and destructor. So these two, we call it as a special methods. And now we'll extend the class student by providing their properties and functionalities. So already we said that the properties are they're having some roll number, name, and marks I'm going to take. So whatever the properties you are going to mention, so that we can mention in constructor. So what I'm saying is some SNO, some S name, some marks. So just I'm modifying this method. Why? Because I don't want this method. So statement. So what I'm saying is self.SNO equal to SNO means in object. For example, if you are considering for S1, self will be the S1 only. If you are considering for S2, self will be S2. If you are considering for S3, self will be S3. Self is nothing but invoking object. So under that, I'm mentioning the property SNO. So you should keep in mind that in Python, you no need to declare the variables. Directly you can use it. So directly you can use it. I'm going to say that SNO is one variable. So under that, I'm taking SNO. Others, if you want to go with differentiation, we can go with differentiation also. So for example, I'm saying SNum. Okay, you can take like that. Similarly, self.SNA or else name. Here I'm going to make SNA. So if you want to make differentiation, otherwise same name also you can use it. Similarly, self.marks equal to marks. So here you should keep in mind that SNum, SNO, both are different. The value which we sent through SNO is going to assign to SNum. The value which we sent through SNA is going to SName. The value which you are going to send marks going to store in marks. And then whatever the functionalities you want, you can work on that one. For example, def, I'm going to display the student data. Just I want to display the things. Self, I'm saying. So print student number, comma, self.snum. Similarly, print student name, comma, self.sname. Similarly, I'm going to take marks, self.marks. So assume it, this is a class of student. It is having one constructor, one destructor, and one display method. This constructor and destructor are going to execute automatically, but display method you're supposed to execute it. Okay. So simply I'm saving this one and I'm executing this one. So now when I said S1 equal to student, I will get an error and it. Why? Because it requires SNO, SName, marks also. So type error INIT, missing 3 required positional arguments SNO, SNA, and marks. So simply S1 equal to student of some 101, name Ramu, marks some 78. Similarly, S2 equal to student of some 102, some Shiva, some marks. Similarly, S3 equal to student of some 103, some Raghu, marks. Like that, we can create n number of objects. If I said S1 dot display, I will get 101 details. If I said S2 dot display, I will get 102 details. If I said S3 dot display, I will get 103 details. So here the class student is an blueprint, and it is in a blueprint, and I can create whatever the objects I want. If I require 60 student details, then I am going to create 60 objects only. If I require 1000 student details, then I am going to create 1000 objects. So whatever the count you want, you can create. So this is about class. So you're supposed to mention class name. So here the brackets are optional. We require it compulsorily. So when I will say that, and the class should contain constructor. So compulsorily should contain the constructor. So when you're defining any method in class, the first parameter should be self. The first parameter should be self. And then whatever the data you required for a particular object, you can mention it. For example, if you are working the person, means a human being, general person, then we can collect his identification number, person number, means like Aadhaar number. So his name, his age, his address, like that. Whatever the things you require, we can collect it. So then you're supposed to store the data into an object only. So self dot some variable name. So maximum people will take same name itself. Here I said SNO. Here also they can go with SNO only. Okay, but it is not restricted. So whatever the name you want, you can take it. Both can be same or can be different also. I said self dot sname equal to SNA. Self dot marks equal to marks. So when I pass some information like S1 equal to student of 101, Ramu 78. So initially it is going to call init method. Self is the default. SNO will get 101, SNA will get Ramu, and marks will get 78. So these data I'm going to store it into the invoking object, that is S1. So when I call S1.display, it is going to execute this method. The student number self.snum. So for S1 object, it is going to create one memory allocation. So for example, will be like this. So when I said S1, it is going to create one memory location. There I can get snum, some 101. So S name, some Ravi, some marks, some 78. So similarly for S2 also, it is going to create another method, another object with details. Similarly for S3 also. Like that, it will go to up to n objects. So whatever the count, you can give it and it is going to allocate the memory. So when you are working with S1, then I will get these information only. When I'm working with S2, I will get this information only. When I'm working with S3, I will get this information only. So there is no correlation between S1 and S2, S2 and S3. All are different and all are storing in different memory locations. So it is about writing Python program for object-oriented technology. If you want to access all the objects at a time, then you're supposed to work with arrays only. So you're supposed to work with arrays. So array is going to create n number of objects directly. And with the help of for loop, we can access it. Or else, if you worked with individual objects like that, what I said, S1, S2, S3, then with the help of for loop, we can access it. For example, I want to display all the objects data in at a stretch. Then what we can do is just we'll work with for loop only. So here I'm having three objects. S1 is there, S2 is there, S3 is there. What I said is for some S in S1, S2, S3, I can say S dot display. So I got all the student details, but I don't want to go with like S1, S2, S3, S4 like that. I want to work with some n objects. It may be 100 or 1000 or else like that. In that situation, it is not possible to go with S1, S2 up to S1000 like that. So simply go with arrays concept. So with the help of arrays concept, we can create an object and we can work on that. So this is about working with classes. So in Python, we can create like this. So this is constructor and this is destructor. And whatever the methods you require, we can add it based on your situation. Okay. And we can practice for like employee details and some other like person, like that we can work on different examples. So here the thing is, so this is about object-oriented programming. So we'll discuss regarding how we're going to work with class and constructor, destructor. So we go with next concept, that is polymorphism. The name itself is saying that poly means n number, morphism means forms. So polymorphism is nothing but one object with multiple forms. One object with multiple forms. When you are going to create an object and we can show it in different forms, that we call it as a polymorphism. Okay, so we'll take some 10 minutes break and then I will continue the class. And in the meantime, if you have any doubts, you can mention in chat box, then we'll rectify the doubts. Okay, we'll continue the session. So the polymorphism is one of the main future in object-oriented technology. So it is also related to the real world object. So this can be found in anywhere. For example, when you take pen, so you may find n number of pens. We may find n number of pens, but all pens will not be same like that. So you may get the pen in different colors, different models, different sizes. But all the pens functionality is same, means writing. Human body. So all are human beings. We all are human beings. But everyone will be in different shapes. So some people may be tall, some people may be very low, so very small. So the age variations are there. Okay, male, female is there. Everyone, all we call it as a human being only, but in different shapes we can find the human being. Like that, in any real world object, we can find this polymorphism concept. So simply I can say that one object with multiple forms. So for example, you is an example, means the person. So if we take you as an example, the person, so you people will act like students. Now you people are students. When you are listening class, you people are students. So when you are in home, you people will be like son or daughter to your parents. When you are outside, you will be a friend to your surrounding persons. Okay. So same person, different environments will act like in different ways. So the same person is a student, the same person is a son or daughter to their parents, the same person is a friend to the surrounding people. That is called a polymorphism. So assume it one small example. Here I'm going to take one class called rectangle. So discussing regarding the related things of rectangle. So square, I took one more class. So discussing regarding the square object. Circle, I took. So when you come to here, I found the method called area. So in rectangle, I found the method called area. In square also, I found the method called area. In circle also, I found the method called area. So area method is same, but based on the shape, it is going to change it. When it comes to rectangle, the area of rectangle is length into breadth. When it comes to square, so area is side square. When it comes to circle, it is pi r square. Area is one only, but when you change the shape, automatically the formula is going to change. You may get different results. So here the area method is work like a polymorphism. Okay, so the same object will work in different ways. So we'll go with small example on this one. The same example, I'm going to execute it. So going to take new file. Class, I'm saying rectangle. So if you want, you can go with brackets, otherwise no need to work on that. So def I90 self. So length and breadth will be the properties for this one. Self dot length equal to L. Similarly, self dot breadth equal to B. Then depth area. Simply going to return self dot length into self dot breadth. Similarly, I'm going to work with class square. F INIT. So self comma side. So self dot side equal to S I'm taking. So I'm going to define the method called area. Self is the default. So return side square. So self dot side square in the sense double star. Similarly, I'm going to work with circle. So def INIT. So self comma radius. So self dot radius equal to R. Similarly, area. Here return. So self dot pi r square means 3.142 into R self dot radius square. So just I'm going to say poly1. I'm executing this one. So now I can create the objects for these three things. Some R equal to rectangle. So length, breadth, some 3, 7 I said. Similarly, S equal to square side. So I'm taking some 5. Similarly, C equal to circle. I'm taking radius, some 12 I said. So for some A, or else some V in R comma S comma C means these are the objects of shapes. Simply what I'm saying V dot area. Simply I'm calling V dot area. That's all. LENGTH. LENGTH. Spelling mistake. Just I'm running this module. So it's okay. Then so for some V in R comma S comma C. So V dot sorry. For V in R comma S comma C. V dot area. Just I'm calling area method. So DIE spelling mistake radius. So I got rectangle, area of the rectangle, and area of the square also. When it comes to circle, I got an issue with spelling mistake. RADIUS. Okay. For example, I can mention the message also written. So area of rectangle. Others plus I can mention. So string concatenation, but you're supposed to convert into the strn string. So whatever the form you require, the output we can work on that one. So area of the square. So STR of, similarly, area of circle plus STR of. So whatever the result I got, I'm going to convert it into this one. Simply I'm saving this one and executing this one. Run one. When I supposed to work on this all things. So for V in R comma S comma C, V dot area. So area of rectangle 21, area of the square 25, area of circle 452.448. So I got information in quotations. Why? Because I returned as a string. That's why. Okay. So like that here, the same area method is working for rectangle, square, and circle also. So when you are working with rectangle, the area will be calculated for rectangle. When you are working with square, area is called calculate for square. When you are working with circle, area is going to calculate for circle. So this is an example for polymorphism, one object with multiple forms. And the output which I mentioned is in different formats. You can take it based on our situation. So this is the basic example of polymorphism, and we can work with the various examples. And next, the important concept in object-oriented technology is inheritance. So like other programming languages, Python is also supports inheritance. Inheritance is nothing but acquiring the properties from already existing object. When you are going to create a new object, at the time of creating the new object, we may acquire some properties or functionalities from already existing one. That we call it as a inheritance. And it is also happening in any real world object. So some people may say that when child born, so they will say that the eyes are like his father, nose are like his mother, so color is like his father, like that. So, and when you saw some people, so when the age is grown, then automatically their face will be turned into like his father or like his mother. Okay. So some people we can say. So that we call it as an inheritance. And some people may having some diseases and like asthma, like that. So when his parents are having asthma, automatically it will be affected to his children also. So like that, the object is getting some properties from existing object, his parent, that we call it as a inheritance. So Python is supporting this type of inheritances. So like single level inheritance, multi-level, multiple, hierarchical, and hybrid. So based on the functionalities, we are going to categorize into these 5 types. Single level inheritance is nothing but acquiring the properties from only one object. If you are going to acquire the properties from only one object, means only one parent, that we call it as a single level inheritance. And if you are getting the properties from more than one parent or one object, then we can categorize into these all types. So it may be multi-level, multiple, hierarchical, and hybrid. Generally, the inheritance is going to represent in diametrical representation. So generally, the class is going to represent with the rectangle symbol. assume it this is the parent and children I am going to define. If children is getting the properties from parent in single class, that we call it as a single level inheritance. So if grandparent is there, parent is there, and then children. If children is getting properties from his parent and parent is getting properties from his grandparent, that we call it as a multi-level inheritance. So if the children is getting the properties from his parent, that we call it as a single level inheritance. If children is getting properties from his parent, but the parent got the properties from his grandparent, means his parent, then that we call it as a multi-level inheritance. Multiple inheritance means if children is getting the properties from more than one parent, then that we call it as a multi-level inheritance. Assume it from his father and his mother also. The children got the properties from his father and mother also. Then that we call it as a multiple inheritance. And this multiple inheritance, again, it is categorized into so either hierarchical and hybrid also. Okay. So hybrid is nothing but it's a combination of multiple and multi-level. So if you're going to implement multiple inheritance and multi-level inheritance both, then that we call it as a hybrid inheritance. Okay. So, but here we are not working much more on object-oriented technology. That's why we are not restricting on these all things. So now we are going to discuss small examples and how we are going to work with inheritance. So here I'm taking one example like person is in a class. Person is in a class. So is having its own properties like person name and age. So, and these are the properties like name and age. Similarly, it is having functionality like show name and show age only. And I'm going to take student. Before student, he is a person only. Before student, he is a person. So by birth, no one is student. So we call it as a person only. As a person, he is having its own properties like his name and age. When it comes to student, additionally, we can find one unique like ID, his student ID. So student ID is a property of student and is having functionality like get ID. And the same human being will be a resident only. He will be a resident. Here, so he is the citizen of India. He is the citizen of our nation. So he is a resident of India. So when you are going to work with resident, so you may having his address or else something else, other details also. So here what I'm doing is the resident, he will be a person and student also. He will be a person and student also. So person individually, I'm getting his ID and name. Sorry, his name and age. Individually student is getting his ID and you may get some other information also. When it comes to resident, the student is resident, but student is already a person. So when you're going to combine the properties of person and student both, then he will be the resident. Okay. So this is about small concept on inheritance. So we'll work with one by one. First, I'm going to work with single level inheritance. Then we'll work with multiple inheritance. So I'm going to open a new file. So the class, I'm going to make it as a parent. Whatever the class name you want, you can do it. Okay. Def init self. So parent is having his own ID, parent name, so self dot parent ID equal to PID, self dot parent name pname equal to pname. Then def display one I am saying. So print parent ID comma self dot PID. Similarly, print parent name comma self dot pname. So I'm going to define another class like dependent. So every dependent is having some independent person and his parents. So that will be the parent and so when you are going to acquire some properties from his another class, that class I'm going to define here. I mentioned it is a parent. So def init self. I'm going to mention his parent ID, his parent name, and dependent name, DEPT name I'm saying, and dependent age. So I said D name and DH. So here I'm getting his parent ID, parent name, dependent name, and dependent age only. First, you're supposed to call the parent class constructor only. So dependent class the dependent class parent is parent only. What I'm saying, parent dot underscore underscore init underscore underscore, and you're supposed to pass PID comma pname only, parent ID and parent name, and then self dot self dot dname dependent name equal to dname, self dot dh equal to dh. Then def display 2 I am calling. Here I am calling display 1, and then print dependent name as self dot dname. So comma you can mention, not plus. So print some dependent age self dot dh. So like that I can mention number of classes. Simply I'm saying this one class 2 and I'm executing this one. So I'm going to make d equal to dependent of, so parent ID is someone, parent name is Ravi, dependent name is Arun, age is 6 years old. Okay, self missing one required positional argument p name. So here D is in a dependent and D is in a dependent. D dot display 2 I am saying. Display 1 is not defined. Sorry. Here I supposed to mention parent or dot. Else self dot also I can say. Just will check it. Module. So D equal to dependent of someone comma Ravi comma. So D dot display 2. When I said D dot display 2, I'm getting his parent ID, name, and dependent age. So if you're having some n dependents, we can going to create n dependent names. Okay. So this is about a single level inheritance. Here I'm having one parent and dependent. So dependent is getting the properties from single parent. So this is called single level inheritance. Similarly, if you are getting from more than one parent, then that we call it as a multiple inheritance. And we may go with multi-level inheritance also. So this is an example for inheritance concept. So from which class you are going to get the properties that you're supposed to mention here. And if you are getting the properties from more than one class, so you can mention that class name also. Okay. So, and this is single level inheritance. I want to make it as up to multi-level. So if I go with multi-level, what I'm saying is, assume it student I'm taking. So student is also a dependent. So I'm taking all the properties of dependent. Student is a dependent itself. He is having additionally, he may having his ID or else his marks like that. So whatever the properties you want, you can take. So here student is a one object person, he is a dependent. So here when you observe that student is getting the properties from dependent and dependent is getting the properties from parent. Student is getting the properties from dependent and dependent is getting the properties from parent. That we call it as a multi-level inheritance. So here, so def underscore underscore init underscore underscore self comma parent ID, parent name, dependent age. I am taking student ID, std ID, student ID. So I am calling dependent dependent dot underscore underscore init of self comma pid comma pname comma dname comma dh, and then self dot std id equal to std id I'm saying. So def some display 3 I'm calling the method display 3. So here what I'm saying is self dot display 2 means it is going to get all the data from dependent. Then additionally I supposed to display student ID. Student ID is self dot std id. That's all. Simply I'm saying this one, saving this one, we are going to execute. So earlier I created an object for dependent. Now I'm going to create object for student. Student. So his parent ID is on 1. His name is Ravi. And dependent name means student name is Raju. His age is 7. And his ID is 101. Simply I'm saying s dot display 3. When I call s display 3, getting his parent ID, his parent name, the dependent name, dependent age, and student ID. So here I'm getting the properties from one by one. So student is getting properties from dependent, dependent is getting properties from parent. This is an example for multi-level inheritance. Multi-level inheritance. Multi-level inheritance is nothing but like this, it is going to process something. So, and next we discuss regarding multiple inheritance. So multiple inheritance is nothing but if you are getting the properties from more than one class, then we call it as a multiple inheritance. So I think already we have an example. This is an example for multiple inheritance. Here I'm having person class with person details like his name, age, and I'm having show name and show age methods. Similarly, I'm having student class with the init method and get id. Now I'm going to create a new class called resident, and it is getting the properties from person and student both. It is getting the properties from person and student. So if you are getting the properties from more than one class, that we call it as a multiple inheritance. So it is a simple example for multiple inheritance. Okay. So simply I'm creating an object for resident class by passing the person name, so person age and student ID. So whatever the properties I required, whatever the functionalities I required, I can work on that one. So it is in a small example for multiple inheritance. So next we're having the method called super. So super is in a method. Super is in a method which is going to represent its parent class. So generally in program, I said in the previous program, I said here. So I called init method parent dot underscore underscore init. Instead of that, I can use super and instead of that, I can use super. For example, it can be like this. So instead of this, I can use super. So super indicates its parent class. If you don't know the names of its parent class, then go with super. Just I'm running this one. So, and I'm going to work with this. So when I mentioned super, I think don't require this one. So s dot display 3. I got student number, name, dependent name, age, and ID. So the super is going to represent its parent class. So earlier I called init method by mentioning the name of parent class, and I mentioned the additional parameter self also. But when I called super method, directly I passed person ID and name. So I didn't mention the self only. Similarly, here also, where here instead of dependent dot these all things, so simply I can say super dot, and you can omit self also. So instead of dependent, I am saying super method, super, and you no need to send self. I'm saving this one and I'm running it. Okay. So I'm creating this object and working with display method. So this is a use of super keyword, and not a keyword, it's a method. So in other programming languages also, in Java also we're having super keyword. Here also we can use it. So super is a key method which is going to represent its parent class. So whatever it may be the parent class, it is going to represent its parent. Another, we are having method resolution order, MRO. There is a method called MRO, method resolution order. So actually, when you are working with inheritance, I don't know the sequence of object which is going to create, or else I want to know the sequence of object it is going to create. And so, for example, earlier I am having the method like parent, parent class is there, then dependent class is there, then student class is there. Okay, so when I'm going to create an object for student class, how it is going to process it? First, which object is going to create? So how the process is going on? These all things we can find with the help of MRO, method resolution order. Every class is having this special reserved word only. Okay, so we can say that double underscore MRO double underscore. For example, if I want to know regarding the student object, sorry. So here I'm having S object only. So S dot underscore underscore MRO underscore underscore. Sorry, student dot underscore underscore MRO underscore underscore. If I said student dot underscore underscore MRO underscore underscore, what is going to happen? So first, giving preference to student. If you called any method, first it is going to giving the preference to student. Means it will find, it will search on student. And if the method or something is not exist in student, then it is going to search on dependent. If the method or property not existing dependent, then it is going to search in parent. And again, if it is not exist, then it is going to work on object. So this is an hierarchy which is working for method resolution order of student class. So for student class, dependent is parent. For dependent class, parent is a parent. For parent, object is a parent. So there is a class called object. It is a parent for all the classes. It is the parent for all the classes. So in interview, they may raise a question, what is the parent for class for all the classes? Object. Object class is a parent for all the classes. Okay. So this is about inheritance concept and regarding super and MRO. So next we are having method overriding. So that we'll discuss on tomorrow class. So tomorrow we'll wind up regarding the inheritance and other topics which is related to object-oriented technology. So have any doubts? Any doubts in this class? Okay, so then we'll wind up the session and tomorrow we'll continue.